Okay, so I'm Stephan. If you didn't know me, I'm the CCO for Ethereum. Tonight we have three special guests. We have Shine Jones, we're going to talk about regulatory compliance, working for Consult. We have Jack Nicholson, who's going to talk about the Merkle Tree project and regulation. He's a head legal researcher at MerkleTree.io. And Chris Jing was a senior IT lawyer. So before we go into that, a couple of new things which I think we'll be quite excited about when it comes to Ethereum. Branding for Swarm. Swarm is our decentralized storage layer. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, you've probably heard about it. We got Whisper, the decentralized messaging platform, and we have Swarm, the decentralized storage platform, as well as the EVM, which is the consensus engine for the Ethereum technology stack. So this is going to be the logo for Swarm. I think you're the first ones to see it. This is the first time we present it. And it's doing quite well. We run a few tests on Swarm recently. We distribute our own chain across Swarm. It won't be part of Frontier, but it's well under development. Another announcement is around Mist. You might have not caught that Mist is actually dead and was revived. So Mist is our browser. It was initially written in QML and integrating Chromium. And now we've moved it to a single-page application written in Meteor and encapsulated in an Electron container from GitHub. So it looks like this, and it looks really, really nice. Obviously, the advantage of using Electron is cross-platform. It's what the Slack guys use for their application. It's very user-friendly, comes with installers for Windows, OS X, and other platforms. And I think people can be quite excited about this. Again, not something that's going to be part of the Frontier launch, but you can already play with it, you can download it, and of course we welcome you to contribute if you're a developer to the code base. Another new logo, Solidity, got its own logo, now its own brand, obviously reminiscent of what we do with Ethereum. A couple of things about Solidity that are going to be in the language, but not at launch, but we're actively working on. Invariants. Invariants are really cool. If you create a metacoin, you can say there can be no more than, say, 1 million metacoins issued on the smart contract. And if you write code that somehow could let someone create more than a million metacoins, it will refuse to compile. So it's really useful as a developer, as part of the Mix IDE, to go and use those hints, so to speak, from the language itself to go and deploy your apps. We're also building something called NatSpec. NatSpec is a way to document your app and your function in the English language using parameters in line with the documentation. So when it's produced and the contract is called and the function is executed, the user can see in plain English what this is about to do. So it will say, are you sure you want to send, say, 10 metacoins to account XYZ with a big yes-no type choice. And because it's in plain English, it's fairly trivial to then convert it back to any other language. So internationalization will be core to our efforts in making the platform more accessible. Two MOOCs. Yes, because that's the big question, isn't it? When does this thing actually launch? When are you going to launch? A MOOC, by the way, is defined by Vitalik as a period of time alternating between 1 week and infinity. So 2 weeks is what we're actually gunning for right now. But you really are wondering, when are we going to launch this thing? And the good news is, we're actually pretty damn close. We went in code freeze 2 days ago. That's the logo for the release. And that means that in the coming weeks, what we're going to do is we're not going to add a single feature to this thing. All we're going to do is we're going to look at the bugs that people are raising on GitHub, we're going to look at the bug bounty, and we're going to fix that, and only that. And when there's no more bug, then we're going to launch. So we're really, really, really close to launch now. This is also the last meetup. Quite the last meetup until November, actually. Until October, which is quite a long way down. That's because we got DevCon 1 coming up, which is a developer symposium, and that will take place in London, so that's good news. You guys won't have to travel. It's in October. The date, we haven't confirmed yet, but we're looking probably the week of the 5th if we can secure the venue. If we can't secure the venue, I'll have to move to another date. But right now we're looking at very early October. It's going to be really exciting. We're going to have keynotes from Vitalik, Gav, Jeff, of course. We're going to have presentations from guys building apps on our platform. We're going to have how-tos, how to write code in Solidity, how to build contracts, how to build front-end, how to build back-end for Ethereum. It's going to be a good one. You don't want to miss it. If you go on the website, I think it's devcon.fdev.com. which really should be on screen. I'll pass it around at the end of the presentation. You guys can register your interest to go and attend this thing. Also, if you want media pass, if you're part of the media, we're already issuing these, as well as issuing call for speakers. So if you want to speak there, if you have something you want to present, send us your papers, and we'll look into it. And there's quite a lot of competition. So if you want to speak or if you want to attend, register as soon as possible. So what we're here to talk about tonight is legal system. Now, what's interesting is Ethereum sort of philosophy spawned from a term that Gav calls a legal system, systems that, machines that do not care. They don't care about your creed, your gender, your color, they're machines, they're robots, they don't care. They don't care if it's legal or illegal, because for them there is no such thing. And after all, what's legal in Iran might not be legal in the UK and vice versa. So legality is a bit of a fluffy ground if you're thinking of it from an international point of view, especially when you take into account autonomous contracts like the one we built. So what I wanted to do before we get into the presentation and then the little panel is I wanted to highlight the philosophy of Ethereum, which is that the existence of one system doesn't preclude the existence of another. So historically, back in the days, at the very beginning, we got very angry phone calls from the guys that say Occupy. They were furious, they were building this libertarian system, and we were like the worst thing on earth ever, because they couldn't really wrap their head around the fact that it could be used for many other things. We also got calls from libertarians accusing us to be communists. Because they couldn't wrap their head that you could have a platform where you'd have two systems working in parallel and even exchanging information without one sort of taking over the other. But Ethereum allows you to do all this. And it's, in a sense, the great arbitrator. You got this machine, this contract that you can read. You know it will always execute the same way. No one can change it. It's immutable. You can see its state at all times. If you're a coder or if you use auditing systems or mechanisms or companies, you can be sure that it will always run the code that it says it will. So that's why you don't need third party, and that's what makes it special. So I wanted you to keep that in mind during the conversation. Another note here, which is, for me, really the idea of Ethereum is you're not going to fight the existing system or voice versus exit, voice being where you voice your disapproval, maybe because of the presence of a massive supermarket in your area and you prefer small shops, so you start throwing bricks to it. That doesn't usually work. And exit consists of leaving the country, for example. So Ethereum offers really that third way where you can say, well, actually, I'd rather operate under these rules with this group of people, and we're going to self-organize as a group. And it works quite well, because when I was in Toronto, as far as last year, I saw people self-organizing with just something as simple as Bitcoin, which is not getting a bit long in the tooth as a technology, but even already they were able to be sort of off the grid, and they would go and buy food with Bitcoin, and they would work for Bitcoin, they would exchange fiat for Bitcoin, so they were sort of human ATM, completely off the grid. With Ethereum, these guys can actually self-organize, build companies, issue shares, completely without really caring if the system, what the system thinks of and what the law thinks about what they're doing. So it's apolitical in nature. And again, these are systems that do not care. So I compare Ethereum to sort of the BitTorrent of finance and of contracts, smart contracts in particular. The idea is really to bring this infrastructure that today forms public services, identity, reputation, contracts. That stuff is the stuff we use every day. It's like gas, electricity, and water. Bring it back as a public good on a machine, a virtual machine, where you pay only for what you use. So the cloud in the true meaning of its initial sense. And it enables permissionless entrepreneurship and innovation. People asked me the other day, well, how do you help young entrepreneurs to get started? I think it was in France, because for the bureaucracy over there. And the answer is get out of their way. Let them build what they want to build, and we'll see where it takes us. And if they fail, they fail. If they succeed, wonderful. Another thing that we need to talk about tonight probably are PAOs, so those autonomous organizations that can employ humans to accomplish certain tasks that they themselves aren't capable of accomplishing because they don't have hands. I'd much rather work for a robot, because if I work for a robot, I know who owns the shares, I know where the money is going, I can ask all the questions that if I was to ask at an interview, I would never get the job. So at least I have clarity as to what I'm doing, and I don't enter into a very lengthy contract. I enter maybe into an ad hoc contract. I can work for one company one day, another company the next. I really switch jobs that way in a complete ad hoc economy. So that's another thing we need to touch on. So without further ado, introduce Yves Jacques Nicholson, who's going to talk about project Merkle Tree and regulation.